Um, I wish we didn't have to be here right now. I know that I am having a hard time being here right now. And also, this is absolutely the only place that I want to be right now. I'm Ariella Morkowitz, the founding director of SVIVAH. If you've found your way here for the first time tonight, we are so glad that you're here. SVIVAH is a lot of things, but tonight, SVIVAH is a container. It is a group hug. It is a Shiva house. It is a room where it's okay to cry, where it's okay to be angry and torn and afraid and broken and exhausted and hopeful. It's a room where we hold each other, a room where we come to find strength and support and community. It's a room where we crave each other's stories and where it's okay to lean on each other as we learn from each other. So thank you for being here. This is a hard place to go. I feel like most of us spend our days trying not to dive deep into this place. But today, this week, is the time to dive. And I can tell you, and it won't be a surprise to those of you who have been here before, I cried more tears as we planned this program than I thought I had left in me. But I can already feel there are more than a few left. But I'm going to say, take care of you, please. Whatever that looks like for you, for this hard conversation, please do what you need to take care of yourself. And let's be gentle, gentle, gentle with each other. And if you want, bring a small candle or a source of light so that we can hold some light together tonight. Thank you to Jordan Rosensky, SVIVAH's Director of Community, for your thoughtfulness and care in bringing us together tonight. I'm so grateful that you're here with us and holding us so well. We are also so grateful for the partnership of the SRE Network. SRE is invested in building a Jewish world founded on the values of safety, respect, and equity. We believe in that world too. And we are so thankful for their partnership and understanding of what we need in this moment in order to live by those values. And an enormous thank you to Dr. Guila Benchimol in particular, who you'll meet later, who has taught for us many times before and continues to help guide our work through her deep understanding of even the most complicated human relationships, guided by those values grounded in powerful Torah. And I need to thank Rabbanit Dalia Davis, our Director of Pastoral Education, who has literally tied herself in knots, trying to make sure to hold everyone that needs holding tonight. You, our teachers, those we've lost, those who lost someone, those who have someone they worry for, those who are in harm's way, those who love someone in harm's way, those we are missing, everyone. She cares so deeply about our hearts. Please know how much care and compassion and love she is bringing into the room with her tonight. I'm going to give up. I'm just going to cry and talk, and I hope you'll forgive me because I think tonight is about not holding back. So I'm going to set that precedent and start early, okay? I do not have words of wisdom for right now. I have heartache. I have grief. I obviously definitely have a bucket load of trauma. I have worry. I have frustration. I have exhaustion. And when I get to that place of wanting to stop and cry and scream, or when I can't function during my day because another news headline ripped out a piece of my heart, I have a constant underlying voice in my ear saying, get your act together, girl, who's safe in her home when there are so many others who have very real reason to be losing their minds. Get a grip. It doesn't work. But then looking at the calendar and seeing the looming end of September coming and Sukkot plans starting to be made, everything just totally went haywire. And my body has not been behaving normally. Forget my brain. It was everything, dreading this day, bouncing between desperately wanting to put my head under a pillow and not hear a single more story like the one that Yael, our beautiful speaker, is going to share with us, and also poring over the internet frantically to make sure I didn't miss a single story, a single person, not lose one, not a single loved one, not a word that I didn't bear witness to. I am simply a mess. And luckily, I am blessed to know some very special people who are able to help me find the words to better understand why. But then we flipped the calendar over to October, and it became so real that we desperately wanted to honor those we lost on October 7th. And we got stuck because October 7th is the day when people were killed and kidnapped. And it changed the worlds of people like Yael and all of those who are mourning and missing someone they love forever. And it's also a day that changed every single one of us. Those of us who lost friends, who fight with family members, those who have new security protocols to learn at their synagogues and schools, those who have friends or family in harm's way, those who are sick at the awfulness that comes at us in the news, those of us who stopped wearing our Jewish star necklaces or worry about building our Sukkot out on the main road, those of us who go to bed at night worried, those of us who don't sleep very well anymore, and those of us who wake up fearing what happened in the night while we slept. We are not the same people we were on October 6th, 2023. And tonight, I think we're asking us all to do something uncomfortable and unfamiliar. I want to ask this day, that's a Memorial Day for very specific people. October 7th, I want to ask permission of this day and permission of everyone for whom it is an awful memorial. I want to ask permission for this day to hold us all. Because we need a place. We need a moment for our grief and our loss too. And the permission that I'm asking for is enormous, a giant patience and compassion in understanding that no loss is the same and some losses are infinitely larger than others, but comparing our grief keeps us at a distance from each other. When what we so desperately need as a people is to hold each other close. So I'm going to ask us tonight to just pull our chairs closer together, to reach out our arms a little farther, to squeeze each other a little tighter, and to say, we are all a mess. I can't see your faces, but I'm a mess enough for everybody, I guess. Today is awful, and we need each other more than ever. So I'm leaning into this day and this date as a container of grief and of love. And I'm going to thank Rabbanit Dalia for leading with love. And thank you for holding us tonight.
Thank you so much, Ariella, for just starting us off in such an authentic and soulful and heartfelt place. and explaining so beautifully why we're here tonight and why we're gathered at this time, both this time of craziness of all of the holidays coming at us and this time when the world is in such a very challenging place and there's so much that's in like this place of anything could happen at any moment. Thank you for bringing us together and allowing us to just be in this place where any feeling that's coming up is completely welcome and where we can be here for one another. And like you, I also was struggling with figuring out what are the words for this moment. And I was thinking, are there words in Jewish text? Where can I find the words? And what spoke to me were actually Israeli songs, older, iconic Israeli songs. And so I want to start us off by using some lyrics that are part of the songs and some words that are written specifically for tonight. And I want to kind of take a bit of two different songs and invite you to chat along with the songs and with these lyrics and to write your own version of it as they come. So the first one is called Halavai, and Halavai means if only. So if you have a Halavai, if only something that you just want to say, if only something, please feel free to put that in the chat as I share these words with you. Halavai ume'anan tered alenu keshet. If only from the cloud a rainbow will fall upon us. Halavai shele'olam hazeh yesh takana. If only there was a remedy for this world.
Yes.
Only a day would spring up from the raging storm. If only the desert would sprout grass. If only we didn't have to gather here tonight for such a heartbreaking reason. If only we could renew our days like the days of old. So if something's coming up for you, if you have if only a halavai in your heart, please feel free to put it into the chat. And the second song that came to me that I kept wanting to think about more deeply is the words Lu Yehi, let it be, right? If only is this what could be, if only it was, and now Lu Yehi is let it be, let it actually be something beautiful and positive. So here are the Lu Yehis I want to share with us for tonight. Lu Yehi, that tonight we can come together to hold each other. Lu Yehi, that we can care for each other as we remember and as we honor those lives lost together. Lu Yehi, that we can pray together, cry together, and hope for better times together. Lu Yehi, that we can all feel heard, all feel seen, and all feel held in this sacred space. So if you have a Lu Yehi that's rising up for you, please feel free to put that in the chat. And I see that so many people are putting things in the chat and it's even going faster than I can keep track of. But please feel free to keep adding them and we'll collect them at the end in some way. Okay, thank you everybody. So you could put in your halavais, your if only, and your Lu Yehis, your let it be. So tonight we're coming together as a diverse group, women who are connected to October 7th in different ways, just as Ariella shared in the opening. And we're all here at SVIVAH. SVIVAH comes from the root word saviv, around or circular. So tonight we will think deeply about the circles and seek to honor the many concentric circles that comprise our community and the Jewish people post-October 7th. There are those who are most directly impacted and sit in the center of the circle. And there are those who are impacted less directly, but impacted nonetheless, and may sit at a surrounding circle. And tonight we're going to honor all of these circles in the best way that we could think of. And we hope tonight to hold everyone's experience with the deepest respect and to honor each circle in the way that is most caring, while also acknowledging the difference between each one. And as we seek to honor each circle through different elements of our program, we will be lighting candles so that you can receive and connect with this image of our community visually and through a Jewish ritual. You'll see these candles increasing and these circles expanding as we progress through this evening. So we're going to start with those who really sit at the center of all of these circles. those whose lives were taken on October 7th. All of the beautiful souls that we miss so desperately, those who we may know personally, those we have read about but have never met, and those whose stories we have not yet learned about. All of them we deeply love and we mourn for. So we're going to start by doing a tefillah for all of those lives, all of those beautiful souls, by reciting an El Malei Rachamim, a prayer that's traditionally cited for those who have passed away. And while we're reciting these words, if you have a name in mind that you want to put into the chat so we can lift up the person's memory, please feel free to do so. So I'm going to read and go back and forth between the Hebrew and the English. El Malei Rachamim, בעולם שלא היו בו רחמים, הנמצא מנוחה עדינה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות הנשברות של זוהר האדם, לנשמת כל חי שנפגעו ונפרעו פרעות וכל זוועות ב7 באוקטובר. El Malei Rachamim, God of compassion. Sorry, I'm having trouble seeing it. 1 second. In a universe that lacked compassion, grant tender rest beneath the wings of the Shekhinah in the broken spheres of human radiance, to the souls of each and every of the injured and the violated in the horrors of the pogrom of October 7th. Al ha'ima asher pagda ish v'isha zakenim ubnei haneurim v'yiladot v'yiladim she'en pinu yodea ketzal liz'ok ule'amra. For all the fear that fell upon each man and woman, elders, youth, and children, our mouths do not know how to scream or put it into words. Ba'avur sha'anu mitkananot u'mitkananiim ba'avuran u'ba'avuram ba'avurenu, al zeh hayad veli beinu al ele chashchu einenu, oy lanu ki nishbarnu, oy ki batenu shanu, ki nishmotenu ve'ukufenu unu upanenu chashchu. For we lament and mourn for them, for us. Because of this our hearts are faint, because of these our eyes grow dim. Woe to us, for we are broken. Woe, for our homes were shattered, our souls and our bodies tormented, and our faces darkened. Lachen, Bal Rachamim, Yigala Sivotenu Le'olamim, Umisof Ha'olam Va'ad Sofo, Yishma'u HaKolot HaNe'elamim, Ve'yishmor B'tzror HaChayim Nishmotenu HaChayim, Hem Nachalatenu, V'navo B'shalom L'Hachlatenu. El Narafana Nifkaot HaNifkaim, El Narafana L'Mishpachot U'Lemetavlim, El Narafana Lanu Kulanu, V'nomar Amen. Therefore, compassionate one, reveal our torment to the world and for all time, and from one end of the earth to the other may the silenced voices utter. Guard our souls in the land of life, for life is our heritage. May we come in peace to healing. Please, God, heal all the injured. Please, God, heal all the families and caretakers. Please, God, hear and heal all of us. And let us say, Amen. Thank you so much to anyone who shared names during that tefillah. And as you can see, there's in the candles, you should be able to see the beginning of this concentric circles that we're going to be building tonight. So now I will read to you the names of the kibbutzim that were attacked on October 7th. And you'll be able to see the list in the chat. And I invite you to say the names of the kibbutzim along with me while you're on mute. Okay, and you'll see the candles beginning to form. Okay, so the kibbutzim are going to come into the chat. Kibbutz Sufa, Kibbutz Ein Hashlosha, Kibbutz Magen, Kibbutz Nachal Oz, Kibbutz Re'im, Kibbutz Nir Yitzchak, Sderot, Nir Oz, Kfar Aza, Yachini, Kibbutz Nirim, Kibbutz Alumim, Kesufim, Mitzif HaAzara, Kibbutz Be'eri, Ofakim, Zikim, Nir Am, Erez, Keren Shalom, Shlomit, the Nova Festival, Masibat Nova, Moshav Michtavim, Yad Mordechai, Moshav En HaBasor, Mefalsim, Kibbutz Kavim, Moshav Pri Gan, Kibbutz Or Haner, Moshav Yated, Yesha, all of the Chayalim, and we'll end with Kibbutz Cholit. So that's Kibbutz Cholit. We mentioned that last because tonight we're going to learn about someone very special from Kibbutz Cholit, somebody who helped revive the community and make it the beautiful place that it was. Tonight we're joined by Yael Bendat-Appell, and Yael is here to tell us a story about her cousin Adi. Yael, I can't thank you enough for offering us the opportunity to get to know Adi, to lift up her memory, and to get to learn from somebody who understands the loss of October 7th so intimately, and who speaks from the heart with such love and compassion. In addition to all of Yael's professional experience, Yael's professional experience has focused on organizational strategy, community planning, change management, program design, and education. She has worked in various communal leadership roles, including Vice President of Jewish Education and Engagement at UJA Federation of Toronto, Assistant Director and Director of Camp Rocara, Camp Vermont, Wisconsin, and much, much more. And you can read Yael's full bio in the chat. And I want to let everyone know that Yael is going to share this story, and it is a story that is incredibly touching and incredibly beautiful to learn about Adi, and also to hear the story is very, very difficult. So please be gentle with yourself and do whatever you need to take care of yourself as you listen. And yeah, thank you for being here, and we're really honored to learn about Adi.
Thank you so much, Rabbanit Dalia, and to the whole SVIVAH team, and to my friend and colleague, Dr. Guila Benchimol, whose wisdom and support brought me to this moment of sharing with you. I really also just want to acknowledge to everyone here that this is not me doing a favor for you. This is you doing a favor for me and for each one of you who has a closeness to someone who was directly impacted by October 7th, or the years now that have passed, the 2 years that have passed since that day. Being given the opportunity to share about our loved ones is really an act of chesed, an act of loving kindness on your part, because it helps us feel like it's possible for the memories of our loved ones to be kept alive. And that's very important. So thank you all for being here and giving me this opportunity. So I want to share a little bit about Adi, my cousin, Adi Vital-Kaploun, from who she was as a person, an incredible person. And then I'll share a little bit about the story of October 7th. I'm coming to you from Toronto, Canada, and Adi was both an Israeli and a Canadian citizen. She grew up in Israel, in Jerusalem. She was raised by her mother, who was a Canadian. Her mother, Jackie, is actually my mother's first cousin, so Adi was my second cousin. And Jackie grew up in Ottawa, Canada, and she made Aliyah. She moved to Israel in the 70s after sort of going through a camping movement that encouraged, a strong Zionist identity. And she fell in love with her Israeli husband, Yaron. And they lived in Jerusalem. They raised their 4 children there. Adi was the third of 4 children. She was always known to be very kind, brilliant, warm. She was very successful at school. She was musical. She spent her childhood dancing and playing basketball. She played the saxophone. She was just full of all these diverse interests and talents. She was very close with her siblings, her 2 older sisters and her younger brother. When Adi fell in love with her future husband, his name was Anani, is Anani Kaploun. He also had grown up in Jerusalem with his family, and they decided to move to the Gaza envelope. They wanted to live in the south of Israel. They loved the land. Anani especially wanted to live a more agricultural life. He wanted to be a farmer. He wanted to work his hands with his hands, and he wanted to work the land. And so it's quite remarkable to me because it's so different from our sort of typical North American lives that Adi and Anani, as very, very young 20 somethings, decided together with a group of friends to move to Kibbutz Cholit, the last of the kibbutzim that Dalia mentioned, and to revive this community that had really started to decline and was really no longer a vibrant place. So we're actually going to show just 2 minutes of a video from over 10 years ago now that was a news profile in Israel on this resurgence and this revitalization of Kibbutz Cholit. And it focused on Adi. It interviewed Adi and her husband, Anani, and some of their friends who started the revitalization process together. And this is my way of helping you get a glimpse into who Adi was before the terrible story of October 7th begins.
לו היינו מגיעים לביקור בקיבוץ חולית שנתיים קודם, הכל היה נראה אחרת לגמרי. הקיבוץ שממוקם בפתחת שלום היה במצב אנוש. תושבים רבים נטשו, הקופה הלכה והתרוקנה. ואז הם הגיעו, 10 צעירים שכינו את עצמם גרעין שותפים והפכו את כל התמונה. ענני קפלון בן ה-24 הוא אחד מהם. הוא גדל בכלל בירושלים, עירוני למהדרין, בוגר מכינה. הבוקר אנחנו פוגשים אותו במטע הלימונים שאותו הוא מנהל. אז מה מביא בחור בן 24 להיות מנהל מטע?
זה מתחיל בזה שאני לא אגור בעיר. טבע, חי, צומח, זה משהו שתמיד דיבר אליי וזרם. זה עושה לי טוב, ממש. לגעת באדמה, פשוט להיות שם.
שלום. היי, אני אורלי.
שלום, אני עדי, מה שלומך?
חמים פה.
חמים ונעים. Okay, so if we can't get it going in the next second, then maybe we'll skip. You just saw Adi's face. She just welcomed you into her home. We were going to share another minute or so of Adi speaking about how they built that small home with their own 2 hands. And she actually, one of the really beautiful things for me in this piece is that she shows the interviewer comments that there are bookshelves in her house filled with Jewish texts, traditional Jewish texts, and how unusual it is in a kibbutz of young people to see Jewish texts. And Adi just responds saying that she is integrated with the Jewish tradition and Jewish language, and even though she doesn't live traditional life in the religious sense, that the religious Jewish our heritage infuses the life that they're leading together and building there for their the young family that they would build. It's a really beautiful moment, and she talks a little bit more about sort of why they chose to build this community together. And again, when I think about someone as young as they were, and it wasn't just Adi and Anani, it was a whole group of friends, 20 or so of them, making a choice to live a life full of intention, full of integrity, modest, and to create something is just incredible. And you know, Adi is one example of the kinds of people that were lost on October 7th. But these people who were young and people who were older in the kibbutzim were people who chose to live there for really important reasons, and they led lives of values. And those are the people who were attacked in their homes. And so it's important to remember that these aren't caricatures. These were real people with very multidimensional lives. So Adi was successful. She had completed her master's at Ben-Gurion University in chemical engineering, and she had begun a career in cybersecurity. They had 2 young boys. So at the time of October 7th, her oldest son, Negev, named after the Negev, which is, the area of Israel that they had moved to. He was 4 years old, almost 4 years old, and their youngest son Eshel, was almost 4 months old. On the morning of October 7th, Anani had gone on a hike with his friends, a sunrise hike with a large group of people from the kibbutz. Apparently, this was something that was done, I think, every month, these morning hikes. So Adi was in her home with the two boys by herself. She very quickly understood the seriousness of what was going on. She went into her safe room with her kids. Anani was on the kibbutz's security team, so she called him and asked him where to remind her how to work the gun that they owned in the home and where it was. And she did that. At the same time, she told him to stay where he was and to hide and not to try to come back. And she also was in touch with her father, Yaron, who had been visiting for the holiday and was staying in a guest house on the kibbutz, but not in her home, in an empty guest house. And she said to him, under no circumstances are you to leave the house you're in. Stay in the safe room. Do not answer the door for anyone, even if they say that they're part of the Israeli army. Stay and do not leave. So I'm going to take a pause there and tell you from our perspective what our experience was like. My family usually does not use phones to communicate on Chag and on Shabbat, on the holiday. And it was a very unusual day in that I heard very early on from my father that something very serious was happening in Israel. And he, who's most in touch with all of our many Israeli family members and friends, was quick to tell us who was accounted for and who he had heard from and had been in touch with and who we knew were safe. And even Yaron, Adi's father, who was at the kibbutz, was in touch, and people knew that he was at least safe and he was in contact with people. Just to note, Adi's sister, one of her sisters, had also moved south and was living in kibbutz Kisufim and had lost touch with everyone. She and her family survived and were okay, but they had lost power and were under lockdown for many, many hours. So it took a long time before the family knew that she was okay. So it was clear from the beginning that the people who we didn't know where they were Adi and her two young boys. We had started hearing about kidnappings. It was a very, very long morning. We were all petrified, feeling obviously totally helpless here. And it became clear after many, many hours that no one had heard from Adi. No one knew where the boys were. Later on in the day, Yaron did leave once the army had arrived, which again was many, many hours later. Yaron did go with some people from the army to Adi's house, and they banged on the doors and they went in. It was a total mess. They were calling for her, and they actually found the body of one terrorist, one Hamas terrorist who Adi had killed, but that was it. They did not find Adi, and they did not see the two boys, the baby and the 4-year-old. So at that point, everyone started assuming that she had been kidnapped to Gaza with the boys. And then sort of this very chaotic period of time happened where we started to hear that someone had seen the two boys. And this was late at night. The two boys had been taken to Gaza. We know more about this. We found out more about this later, but they had been taken to Gaza. They were used for propaganda videos by Hamas terrorists. And we have no idea why, but for some reason, they released the boys basically at the Gaza border. The boys had been taken with a woman who was not Adi, turned out to have been Adi's neighbor, a woman named Adi Vital. And Adi Vital heroically carried the two boys back from Gaza back to Israel. The two boys, although they had been injured, Negev had a shrapnel injury in his foot, and The baby had suffered from smoke inhalation and was covered with black soot, and his lungs turned out to have been, impacted by the smoke. They were reunited with Anani later that night. They were taken to the hospital and they were taken care of. They were reunited with Anani, but Adi was nowhere to be found. For 4 days, the family was under the impression that Adi had been kidnapped because she wasn't found anywhere. However, after that period of time, the army did go back to look for terrorists that might have been hiding in various places in Israel. And they went into Adi's home again. And what they discovered was that in her safe room, underneath the bed, which had been covered with much just stuff from the house, it was kind of like things had been piled and piled up on top of the bed. They did find her body that had been shot dozens and dozens of times. Not only had she been shot there, but her body had been booby trapped with several rimonim, the little bombs. You know what I'm talking about. Anyways, she'd been booby trapped with several bombs. So it was almost another miracle that in that initial looking, that Yaron, her father, who had gone looking for her in the house, that they hadn't found her, because they would have detonated and absolutely injured more people who were searching for her. In the end, she was identified. She was actually identified by her hand and her wedding ring. And there was an interview that Anani gave sort of in the days following, where he felt just so grateful that she hadn't been kidnapped, and that at least they knew where her body was, and that she was able to be buried, and that there was going to be a process for the family of grieving and of knowing where she was, and of being able to be in relationship with knowing that she had been killed. Obviously, one of the things we know now is that she had been killed in front of her two young children, that they had witnessed that in the safe room. And apparently, according to Negev, the 4-year-old, the last thing that she said was that she loved her. So she said to them that she loved them more than anything in the whole world. And now there's a gaping hole in the hearts of, that immediate circle that Rabbanit Dalia talked about, which is the circle of her children and her husband and her parents and her siblings. And then beyond that, her aunts and her uncles and her first cousins. And I am in that next sort of circle of family who loved her and knew her. I brought this one photo to share. This was me right here. I was on my junior year, spending the year in Israel, and I was spending Hanukkah with the Vital family. And here, it's all backwards, so I can't use my fingers correctly. Here's Adi. She was about 10 years younger than me. So I was about 20. She was about 10 years old. But this is one of, my Israeli families that took care of me and adopted me while I spent time in Israel over my emerging adulthood. And so the way I think about Adi is as that 10-year-old girl who I, shared a room with and spent many Shabbatot with. But she became an adult who was accomplished and beloved in her own right. And she built a family and she built a community with her own two hands. And she leaves behind a lot of people who love her and miss her. And thank you again so much for the opportunity to share this story with you.
Yeah, Al, thank you so much for telling that incredibly difficult story. And I'm sorry that the video didn't work, but maybe we can share it with everybody after. One thing that I saw I'm not sure if it was that video or a different video that you shared with us, was Adi doing Rakudayam, doing Israeli dancing, which is something that it was just so beautiful to watch her, and you could just kind of get a tiny, tiny taste of what an incredible person she was, even just from that little clip. So thank you for sharing more about her, and allowing us to kind of hold her in our hearts tonight. And this is one of the drawbacks of doing this on Zoom is that we can't give you a physical hug, but I know that everyone in this room is giving you a hug through the screen right now. And everyone, please, I see some of the chats starting to pop up, so feel free to read the chats and know that we're holding you here and that this program, we want to make sure we're caring for you as much as we're caring for ourselves as well. So thank you. Okay, let's take just a breath for 1 second, everyone. That was really so much. So we're gonna continue with our circles of candles and our circles of people that we want to hold, both who are in this room and who might not be in this room right now, but who we're thinking of and bringing into this room. And the next circle is the circle for the Chatufim, for the hostages, and for their families, and for everyone connected to them. And so we're going to recite a tefillah for the Chatufim, a prayer for the hostages. And we're reciting this prayer in particular, B'schut Hirsch Goldberg Poland, Zichrono Livracha. Hirsch's cousin, Eileen Goldstein, is a beautiful part of the SVIVAH community. And Eileen has been with SVIVAH every single time we came together to pray for the hostages' return. And then to mourn when Hirsch did return, but not as we had prayed that he would. It's really unfathomable that we're still saying this tefillah 731 days later. But here we are. So in the merit of Hirsch's memory and in the merit of his incredible family and the families of all of the hostages who have been moving the mountains of the earth to bring their loved ones home, we're going to say this tefillah together today. We're going to post it on the screen, and I'm going to recite a piece, the beginning piece in Hebrew, and then I'll read the rest in English. Feel free to read it along with me in whatever language is most comfortable for you. Okay, so we'll start with the Hebrew. Elohei Yisrael, Sur Yisrael v'goalo, El Rachum v'chanun, b'tfilah u'b'tachnunim, anu ponim elecha, lachzir b'shalom, lebetehem, et yikarenu hachatufim v'chatufot, shene'akru b'yad zedonot mibetehem, v'nechtafu al eretz oyev. God of Israel, Rock of Israel and its Redeemer, compassionate and gracious God, we turn to you with prayers and entreaties to bring home in peace our beloved hostages who were uprooted by a wicked hand from their homes and kidnapped to enemy land. We are anxious for their fate and terrified by the thoughts of what they are enduring, yet we do not have the ability to save them. We lift up their entreaties before you. Compassionate God, come to their aid, protect them, and bring them speedily to the embrace of their families and loved ones. As you have said, your children shall return to their borders. Amen, so it may be your will. Please also let this be the last time we have to say this tefillah, and may they all return immediately. I'm going to say now the names of the hostages that are still, please God, that are still living. And we're going to put those names in front of you. You can see it on the screen. I invite you to say the names along with me. Matan ben Einav, Eitan ben Ruti Idit, David ben Sylvia, Ariel ben Sylvia, Omri ben Veronica Esther, Gali ben Talia, Ziv ben Talia, Nimrod ben Vicky, Tamir ben Cherut, Matan Shachar ben Einat, Avinatan ben Ditza Tirza, Elkanan ben Ruchama, Eitan Abraham ben Efrat, Evyatar David ben Galia, Alon ben Idit, Yosef Chaim ben Miriam, Rom ben Tamar, Guy ben Mirav, Segev ben Galit, Maxim ben Tala, Bar Abraham ben Julia, Beat ben Joshi. May they all return immediately. Thank you, Ariella, for continuing to add the candles. And the next circle that we're going to add candles for in the next tefillah that I'll recite with you is for a less specific group of people. And I can only imagine how many people need this particular tefillah. This is for anyone who is suffering from residual loss, anyone who's been injured physically, emotionally, or in any other way, and for anyone who is still in harm's way. So while I recite this tefillah, feel free to light a candle if you have one nearby, or to recite any of the words of this tefillah along with me. Ana Hashem, Shemor v'hagen al avadecha, tzor meritecha, hanimsaim b'shivya ba'aza, hagen al chayalei hatzavah v'kochot habitachon, v'chol mi shenimsa b'sakana, hatzila mipach yakush o te'ina alehem ra'ah, v'naga lo yikarev o alehem, v'tatzil et kol mi shebesakanat guf o besakanat rakshit, mikol minei praniot, v'tonot hamitrakshot lavo ba'olam, ושלח נא רפואה שלמה לכל החולים ולכל הפצועים ושמע נא את כל תחנונינו כי אתה שומע תפילת כל פה ברוך שומע תפילה. Please God, watch over and protect the sheep of your flock who are held captive in Gaza. Protect the soldiers and security forces and all those currently in harm's way. Save them all from any peril and harm. Let no evil befall their tents, and save those who are in physical or psychological danger from the calamities that trouble this world. Please send complete healing to all the ill and all the wounded. Please hear the voice of our supplications, for you are the one who hears the prayer on every tongue. Blessed is the one who hears prayers. And there's one more row of candles that's needed and that we invite into our gathering tonight. And that is the row for all of us who do not fit into any of the other circles, but nonetheless have experienced pain and loss of some kind since October 7th, and whose lives have been changed forever. To explain more about this group, I want to share with you something that happened to me a few days ago. A group of speakers from Kfar Aza, one of the kibbutzim that was the hardest hit on October 7th, came to my community, and they shared their stories. Their presentation was in a formal setting, and it was packed with people who came to bear witness and to listen deeply. As I sat there and I listened to the stories, there was one woman who spoke about losing her son. And of course, I was crying as I listened to her. When she and the other speakers finished their story, there was encouragement from the facilitator of the night and who supported the Jewish community and said this is a moment for resilience and for us to be strong and to carry on, and everyone said it, Am Yisrael Chai. But something for me was missing in that moment. Before the resilience, before the strength, before the shouts of Am Yisrael Chai, I really needed a moment to sit and mourn and to cry and to realize how the stories that I just heard had changed me. I needed to go up to that woman in particular and give her a hug. And for security and logistical reasons, I was not able to do so. And so I left the event with my tears and my uncertainty about where to place them. As I was walking out of the event, a friend of mine offered me a ride home. But I declined because I couldn't imagine being with other people in that moment. So I walked home, crying from the event, and I did the best thing I could think of in that moment. And I actually messaged Ariella and Jordan. And I asked them, how can we make space tonight for Adi and for Yael and for all of the hostages and for all of those in the innermost circles? And how can we also hold us who sit a little further back from this?
מה חשבתי לעצמי? הסתכלתי בראי, אני שונה, כן, כבר לא אותה ילדה שבאה עם הלב בוער. מי ביקש להתעורר? איך זה לא פייר? לא, זה מסחרר אותי. שמור עליי גם אם אמעד תחזיק חזק, אין לי אף אחד, תישאר ליד נתקע בברית, אני שבורה. איך הקול שלי נקרא, מנקה את הפנים, מביטה לעננים, הם לא בוכים, איך הם לא בוכים איתי. שמור עליי גם אם אמעט, תחזיק חזק, אין לי אף אחד, תישאר ליד. שמור עליי, תרגיש את הלב שלי, תחזיק לי קצת את היד, אני פה לבד. שמור עליי, תרגיש את שמור עליי. שמור עליי.
I'm sorry I got kicked off, but I'm so glad that Shiri Maimon had the words to fill in, and to welcome us all into the circle now. So this next part is for all of us. And we are so blessed here to have somebody who's going to Shamor Alai, who's going to watch over us and who's going to guide us to the next part of this program, and a true expert in the field, Dr. Guila Benchimol. We knew we needed Guila, and we knew she was exactly the person that we wanted to have here tonight. Guila is a consultant, researcher, educator, and a victim advocate whose work focuses on gender, abuse, and power. She knows how to care for people who have experienced trauma in a way that is full of compassion, care, and deep wisdom. Gila's full bio will be in the chat. And Guila, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Rabbanit Dalia, and thank you so much, Yael, for your beautiful words about your beautiful cousin. May her soul be uplifted by our gathering tonight. And thank you, SVIVAH, for having me. Rabbanit Dalia, you gave me a very big charge, so I'm just going to ask a favor of everyone that we take care of each other in this next part of the program. I will do my best to hold you, and I have the utmost faith in all of you that you're going to do the utmost to hold me. This is a SVIVAH program, so, we're going to have all the feels. And I have been sitting in the chat and following along, and so I know that there is a lot of emotion here tonight, and we are feeling a lot of things on behalf of a lot of people. And like Rabbanit Dalia said, it is important not to forget about ourselves. So I'm going to just ask us before we get into what we're going to do, just to take 1 minute to use one of your senses to touch something, or to see something, or to hear something. You can choose one of the candles to look at on the screen, and just to ground yourself. For those of you who you want, you could put your hand on your heart and just tell yourself that you're okay and that you are with friends. And just to take a big, deep breath in and let it out. And we're going to do another one because I did not get enough air. And as you do the second one, also just feel your feet on the ground or on your bed or on the chair, however you sit. I'm curled up in my chair. So hold your heart and tell yourself you're okay. And also just feel your feet and just, ground yourself. So we're going to take one more deep breath in together. And let it out. Okay. So I'm just going to set the map for where we're going together for the next half hour, so you know what we're doing and where we're heading, and that you know that you're safe and that you're okay. And with your permission, this is our agenda for the next little while. We're going to be together for about 25 to 35 minutes. Use the chat to interact as you always do. And I am going to ask you to answer some questions in the chat when we get to those points. And that's when I'll be able to turn to the comments, but I'm not going to look at them until we get to those points. So just be aware of that, please. So what we're going to do now, we're going to learn a little bit about trauma. It is a word that has been shared a lot tonight, but we're going to define it. And we're going to reflect on whether we have been traumatized and why. We who are in that outer circle, many of us, I do not presume that all of us, I know many people here are in the more inner circles, but many of us are in the outer circles. Why have we been traumatized by October 7th? We're going to explore a specific phenomenon called traumatic invalidation that has been popularized because it has been studied in relationship to the Jewish people in this moment, although it is not about this moment, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to consider whether or not our trauma has been invalidated and by whom. But we're not going to end there because it's SVIVAH. We're going to sprinkle some Torah in between. And I do consider everything that is being shared tonight Torah. Yael's words are Torah. The candles are a part of Torah. Our coming together is Torah. It's Jewish wisdom. So we're going to sprinkle some Jewish wisdom, and we're going to close with some hopeful tools to overcome invalidation, because that is one of the ways that we heal. And the goal of tonight is to hold the pain, but also to heal together. But we're going to bookend our time with two beautiful poems by Mary Oliver that I found to be really, really fitting of tonight. And then, with your permission, we're going to co-create a prayer together, a prayer that will lead us to the next holiday, which begins tomorrow night of Sukkot. And we can take that prayer with us in this really, really hard moment. Can I get a thumbs up? Or is everyone okay with that agenda? Okay. Thank you so much. So I am feeling heavy. I'm feeling very heavy tonight. I'm feeling heavy around this time of year of the high holidays. I'm feeling really confused about how to go into this holiday of Sukkot, which is Zaman Simchatenu, a time of our joy, while we are commemorating October 7th, while I know that so many people are going to be lighting Yortzeit candles, candles that mark the commemoration of a death. And this was not just a death, it is a murder. So heavy. And I'm feeling heavy by everything that is being shared tonight. And so what I want to share is Mary Oliver's poem, Heavy, to start our conversation on trauma. And I'm going to read it along, and I do think that we have it to share. So you can read together with me, you could follow with me. That time, I thought I could not go any closer to grief without dying. I went closer, and I did not die. Surely God had his hand in this, as well as friends. Still I was bent, and my laughter, as the poet said, was nowhere to be found. Then said my friend Daniel, brave even among lions, it's not the weight you carry, but how you carry it. Books, bricks, grief, it's all in the way you embrace it, balance it, carry it, when you cannot and would not put it down. So I went practicing. Have you noticed? Have you heard the laughter that comes now and again out of my startled mouth? How I linger to admire, admire, admire the things of this world that are kind and maybe also troubled. Roses in the wind, the sea geese on the steep waves, a love to which there is no reply. For many of us, and I'm assuming everybody because you're here tonight, October 7th is something we cannot and have not put down. It is still ongoing and reverberating. And as my colleague who is a professor of Holocaust studies said to me soon after October 7th, this will change our generation forever. Our generation will not get over October 7th. It will define who we are as Jews for the rest of our time on this earth. Some of us may have been surprised or unable to articulate what we were feeling in those early days of October 7th, and some may feel guilty to even use the word trauma related to what we've been feeling for the past 2 years. When we hear stories like Yael's and those in the more inner circles, how dare I say that I feel traumatized? But when I was at the UN in December 2023, and I heard stories by first responders, we came together in a room with Cheryl Stamberg. I had the pleasure to be with Rabbanita Lisa and Ariella from SVIVAH. And my colleague Sheila Katz handed the mic to me. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't know. And she handed me the mic and she said, "Can you say some words to the women here after listening to the horrors of that day?" And I gave some words which I thought everybody knew. I didn't think it was anything important. I said, maybe you're feeling a kind of way and you don't know why. It's because as Jews and as Jewish women, wherever you are in the circle of grief and trauma, you are feeling secondary victimization. As women and as Jews, especially that combined identity, in seeing these stories and then in seeing the world's response to those stories, we were feeling victimized ourselves. And people said to me, "I didn't have that language. Thank you for that language." So tonight, what I hope to do today is to learn some language together that will help us clarify what we're feeling, that can give words to the tears that we are shedding and to the shakiness, the vibration in our voice when we are trying to speak right now, when it feels like there are no words, as Ariella started tonight. And I've even heard from Jewish therapists how many of their Jewish patients come to them and say, I don't know what's going on with me since October 7th, but I am not okay. And they're not coming with a particular thing to talk about other than I am not okay. And so how do we, as Mary Oliver says in the poem Heavy, how do we carry it? How do we balance it? What does that even look like? And what does it mean to each of us personally? Like Rabbanit Dalia said, that outer circle in those candles right now that we're talking about is us. Those are being lit for us. And so I want to just give some language for trauma. What is trauma? How do we define trauma? And so trauma refers to an event or a series of events or a set of circumstances that is experienced by a person physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, and it can have lasting adverse effects. I'm going to put that definition in the chat. For those of us that are visual learners, you have it for yourself. And so there are three common elements in trauma which highlight that it is beyond a person's control. The first element is that trauma is something that is unexpected. The second is that a person is unprepared for trauma. And the third is that there's nothing that a person can do to stop it from happening. So if you look at these three elements, it is unexpected, it is unprepared, and you can't stop it from happening. They define the aftermath of October 7th. Now, trauma is not necessarily the thing itself. It is the impact of the event itself that causes trauma, that causes all of this pain that we are having, right? Something occurs, an incident occurs, and then it's how we react to it. And so therefore, if there's anybody on this call, and we talked about this in our preparation, there's anybody on this call that says, I have a lot of different feelings about October 7th or post October 7th. I have anger, I have rage, I have bitterness, I don't have trauma. That's also okay. A lot of people will react to the same exact event or set of events differently. And we don't have to feel the same way, and we aren't going to feel the same way. But a very common theme amongst almost every Jewish person I've spoken to in the last 2 years is that I am not the same person I was before. And it has already been shared multiple times tonight, both verbally as well as in the chat. And so it is the emotional response to this event or these incidents that overwhelm a person. And it can have impact on us. It results in shock. It can result in denial. It can also change us physically, as well as in our mind and in our behaviors. And it can be really, really difficult to define, but I don't think anyone here would deny that October 7th was a national trauma for us. And the response to October 7th has only exacerbated that national trauma. And so When I went to Israel after October 7th to volunteer, I did hear from a woman who's talked a little bit about being in that outer circle of trauma. She had lost her nephew, and he was so beloved to her. And she didn't get to sit Shiva for him. His grandparents didn't get to sit Shiva from him. They weren't receiving packages of care from their loved ones. Nobody was reaching out to them before Pesach to give them special wishes, remembering their grandson. And so she said, where do we go? Where do we go? Where do we put our trauma? And there's actually a term for this. It's called disenfranchised grief, which is a loss for which grief is natural, but it's not necessarily socially understood, right? So maybe you have heard, you're still upset about October 7th. That was 2 years ago. Aren't you over it? Maybe from colleagues that don't understand, or neighbors, or maybe even people in your family, right? Somebody had written in the chat, I don't remember who it was, I have such strong emotions and I don't know what to do with them. And there are those of us that feel more than others. That doesn't mean that others don't feel or that they're not feeling traumatized, but there are those of us that feel more than others. And so tonight it is about honoring the trauma and the grief of all the circles, but also acknowledging that for us, those of us that are here, we came here tonight for a reason. We came here tonight to be held, to feel held, and to be seen, and hopefully to see one another and say, this is where we're going to be. You know, in fact, I logged on to this call from the Toronto vigil tonight. I logged on to their space and I said, like, I'm going from one vigil to another. That vigil was really about the more inner circle and for the Toronto community. I'm sure you've read about how anti-Semitism has been rising specifically where I am. Everywhere, but in Toronto, it's been difficult. And then I said, and now I'm going to go to a place where I know I'm going to be held, and God willing, hopefully, I will also be able to hold others. And so I just want to ask you for to put your hand up or your thumbs up or even to put a star in the chat. Did anything that I just shared about trauma resonate for what you yourself have been feeling since October 7th? Yes. Okay. So what we want to talk about now, and thank you everyone for sharing with me, is that trauma actually changes our brains. It makes us wonder, am I safe? Am I loved? What's the reason for this? Is there a reason for this? What can I learn from this thing? That's actually called post-traumatic growth, when you take the lesson from a trauma. And trauma has many, many intersecting layers and layers of impacts on our lives. It can have physical impacts, we said before, right? Change our bodies. It can have psychological impacts, emotional impacts. It has relational impacts, meaning that it impacts our relationships with other people. And it even can have spiritual impacts where we start to question our relationship with our God, if you believe in God or spirit or religion or religious community, right? Trauma has ripple effects, and those ripple effects extend outward. And so, in 2 words or less, can you start to share a little bit in the chat how trauma has affected you since October 7th for those of you who feel comfortable sharing? So you might say, no sleep, constant news, doom scrolling, haven't been able to eat. So share a little bit about that. And I'm going to tell you one tiny way that I have felt, traumatized, if I'm allowed to use that word, by October 7th. So some of you know that I was a Jewish educator for over a decade before pursuing a degree in criminology. And eventually I landed to study sexual violence in faith communities as well as outside of faith communities. And I was trained by amazing feminist thinkers and wonderful women leaders. And I was trained as well in restorative justice to bring those who have been harmed and those who caused harm together, right? By amazing people in the field. And when October 7th happened and I watched Israeli women be brutalized, I did not hear a word from my colleagues And these were personal colleagues. They know I'm an Orthodox woman. They know how important Israel is to me, and they know that I care about sexual violence. I only heard about one side of the story, and it wasn't the Israeli side, and we are able to hold multiple sides at the same time. And not only that, it was completely discounted and even worse. And so to me, I didn't even know, as a person who abandoned Jewish education. I mean, not abandoned. I am here today with gratitude to SVIVAH, but I left a form of Jewish education to do something very different. And I heralded all of my teachers. I felt really abandoned by them. And so what we know about trauma, sorry, before we go that, I do want to go to what you all shared. Sleep disruption, crying at anything, constant fear, worried about whether it's time to leave, doom scrolling, worry, overwhelmed, not feeling safe. Thank you to everybody who is sharing, and you can keep sharing as you feel comfortable. But what we see here is that this trauma is real. And so I am preaching to the choir, because SVIVAH is a place that does so well to show up for others and to take care of others. But what I want to talk about is what we faced as a Jewish community overall. Now, I am painting with big brushstrokes. That does not mean to say that the Jewish people don't have friends in outside of Jewish spaces, and that there are amazing people that did show up for us. But there is research that came out, which is the complete opposite of how SVIVAH says we should show up for traumatized people, of how we should show up for one another. And I want to draw our attention to the work of Dr. Miri Bar-Halpern and her colleague, who studied traumatic invalidation. That means they studied how Jewish people perceive their trauma being reacted to by the world. And they did not coin the term traumatic invalidation. This is, in fact, a term that was coined by other therapists many years ago. And traumatic invalidation is exactly what it sounds like. It is the invalidating of trauma. It is telling those who are traumatized, your trauma isn't real. You are to blame for your trauma. Your trauma doesn't matter. It is not important. It's not worthy of my attention. And this is something that those of you who have come to programs at SVIVAH on issues of sexual harm that we have had pre and post October 7th are familiar with, right? When we blame the victim, when we tell them that it is their fault, when we say, you know, it's not true. It is impossible that this story that you're telling me is true. But what they did was they took this research on traumatic invalidation and they studied Jewish people's stories to them of how their trauma, when they come forward with their trauma to the wider world after October 7th, how it was responded to. And they found 9 specific behaviors that were used to invalidate Jewish trauma since October 7th. And I'm going to put those 9 in the chat so that you could follow along with me. But then I'm also going to share the message that each one carries. And so these 2 researchers found these 9 behaviors. So there was emotional neglect, there was criticizing, there is unequal treatment, ignoring, excluding, misinterpreting, controlling, blaming, and denying reality. I'm going to go through each one for the message that we feel when that behavior is applied to us. So emotional neglect, the message is your suffering doesn't matter or you are unlovable. And remember before what I said about how the brain reacts to trauma? It asks the question, am I loved? Am I loved? The message that criticizing gives us is you are bad, you are unacceptable, and as a people, your people are bad. The Jewish people are unacceptable. Unequal treatment's message is you are inferior and unworthy. You are inherently different from everyone else. And different here is more negative, right? You are worse than everyone else. Ignoring's message is you don't matter. Your Jewish identity is not important. Excluding is you do not belong. You are unwanted. Misinterpreting is you can't be trusted. You are dangerous. Controlling's message is your way of being is wrong. You need to change, not we need to change to accommodate you. And we will send a chart where you can see these after the session tonight. Blaming is clear. Your problems are your own fault. You cause trouble for everyone else, and you are too powerful. And then finally, denying reality. You're crazy. We cannot trust your perception. And they found that these 9 behaviors were often used to invalidate Jewish trauma in the last 2 years. But interestingly, in their research, in my research on victims of sexual violence, and in the research on trauma in general, what we find, and this is the part that is for us, remember the outer circle that we are sitting in today, everyone, we have found that when people's trauma is invalidated over and over and over again, what we then do is we invalidate our own trauma. We start to take those 9 behaviors and we apply it to ourselves. So I start to blame myself. I start to tell myself, yeah, I'm reading this news article. Maybe we are crazy. Maybe this not really happened the way it is. Maybe I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't be, publicizing this. We're causing problems for ourselves. Maybe I should hide my Jewish star. Now, obviously, you have to be safe. But the research shows that when somebody's trauma is invalidated over and over again, what I do is I then invalidate my own trauma. So I'm going to ask you to take a minute and to look at the 9 things and write in the chat if you've experienced any of those. You can write number 1, 2, 3, write any of the numbers, and then take a minute and write if you have actually done that to yourself. Have you invalidated your own trauma since October 7th? And in the spirit of this discussion, maybe we've even done it because we have said, like every person I ever speak to in my line of work, my story isn't so bad. Compared to others, my story isn't so bad. And given what we heard from Yael tonight, it is understandable if we're going to do that, but we're not going to come out of this if we don't name that we too are hurting and that we too need to mark our pain and need our pain to be seen by others. So I'm going to ask again. You could put it in the chat or you can just think about it to yourself. Write the number, write which one if you want. Which ones have you experienced by others? And which one perhaps have we done to ourselves? As I'm saying this, I'm thinking about Yom Kippur that we just ended, that we just sat, many of us, and we hit our hearts with the confession, with the vidui. And we said, we did this, and we did this, and we did this. And tonight, I want to give space to say, people did things to us. People may have invalidated our trauma. And let's forgive ourselves if we internalized it to the point of invalidating our own trauma. It is understandable if those are the messages we are constantly getting. And this is an academic article, a peer-reviewed article that has found over and over again that this is what many Jewish people face, these 9 behaviors of traumatic invalidation. I just want to give a second to go through the chat. Thank you to everybody who is sharing. It's very interesting. Jordan shared, it's easier to admit that I've invalidated my own trauma than to admit that others have too. I hear that, especially given the kind of trauma that is being invalidated by many in the world in the last 2 years. I experienced all from others, and I did 7, 9, and 10 to myself. So we see that this is happening, and we see that this has happened. And what happens when we invalidate our own traumas, right, is we start to lower that barrier. We start to make space for our traumas to be invalidated. We start to accept it, and then that vicious cycle continues. But we're not going to end on traumatic invalidation. We need to give ourselves an idea of what to do, right? And so I want us to turn to something called trauma-informed care. Now, that is the real way that trauma is supposed to be responded to. It is the opposite, the very opposite of traumatic invalidation. I'm going to read out the definition that I just put in the chat. Trauma-informed care is a strength-based framework that is grounded in an understanding of and responsiveness to the impact of trauma. So both understanding that trauma happened and trying to respond to it. It's not just validating, yes, yes, that happened to you. It's trying to actually respond. It emphasizes strength, safety, and opportunities for both the people that have gone through the trauma, but also those that are trying to help them. And it creates a sense of control and empowerment. And so how are we supposed to create a sense of control and empowerment for ourselves tonight, for everyone in that circle of candles as we move into October 7th and as we go into the holiday of Sukkot, with these very, very heavy feelings that we are feeling, with the fact that it is not over? How are we supposed to move on? And so I want to turn to some beautiful words that I read over Rosh Hashanah by Naama Levitz-Appelbaum. I know I'm giving you guys a lot of links to eventually read and watch later, but I try to give you things so that you don't just have to listen to me. You're more than welcome to do a deep dive later. And so Naama Levitz-Appelbaum is writing in the Sources Journal in an essay called An Invitation to Rise from Our Communal Mourning. And as I read that essay, I kept saying to myself, how are we supposed to rise when we're still in this prolonged Shiva, when the hostages are still there, when we don't know when or how this is going to end? How do we rise? But also, how do we keep sitting? How do we keep sitting? And what help can we offer each other? And so in this essay, she offers a path towards a communal rising from these 2 years of mourning. And she's speaking to both Israeli and diaspora communities. And what she does there is she looks at the ritual of Shiva. And she says that participating in Shiva, which is a communal ritual, Shiva is the 7 days of mourning after a loved one passes away. It offers structure when emotions can be overwhelming. It offers grounding and perspective, both of which we have needed really, really badly in these last 2 years. Now, in the case of mourning, in the case of the Jewish Shiva, right, there's a framework and it allows a person to move forward. You start with the most intense period, which is the day you find out that a person has died. You then move into 7 days of sitting low on the ground. Mirrors are covered in the home. We don't bathe, right? There are certain things that we do to mark that Shiva, and it gets lighter and lighter as time passes. Then you mark the month, then you mark the year, and then you have every year the Yortzeit, or the Nachala, as we call it in the Sephardic tradition, right? The marking of the year. It's why we're here today. And so she says the rituals of mourning in the Shiva, in the Jewish framework, are a way to mark time, but they are an act of communal care, guiding us through moments of loss and helping us find a way to move forward. And that's what tonight is about. Tonight, SVIVAH has given us a gift. SVIVAH has said, we're not going to let October 7th pass and not come together. We're going to come together and we're going to offer each other support. And Yael even said that it is not a favor that she is doing for us, although it was a beautiful gift. It is not a favor that she is doing for us to take out of her time to share with us about her beautiful cousin, but in fact, it's a chesed, it's a favor that we are doing for her to listen and to uplift her, I hope, Yael, in being able to learn more about Adi and her beautiful life and her beautiful legacy. And so going back to Naama's essay, she talks about, there's this debate with the rabbis about how are we supposed to mark the most biggest national tragedy, the destruction of the temple, which is something that we continue to mourn, right? We continue to mourn every year on the 9th day of Av, the Hebrew month of Av. We mark this national tragedy. But the rest of the year, we don't mourn the destruction of the temple, even though it's not here. And we've been mourning this for forever. And so she says there's all of these debates. Should we never listen to music again? Should we never eat meat again? What should we do to commemorate this loss? And they settle and they say, no, we're not going to do these major things that are going to stop us from feeling joy on a national level. We're going to interweave it into the fabric of our life. We're going to do certain things in moments of joy to remember the destruction of the temple. So, for example, if you've been at a wedding under a chuppah when the glass is broken, right? You're at the height of joy. You're at the height of a new foundation, of a new home and a new family. 1 minute before we go crazy dancing, we're going to stop and we're going to break a glass and say, as happy as I am right now, my joy is tempered because I'm going to remember that the temple has been destroyed. And if you've ever walked into a home and you've seen in the front a piece that is left unfinished, right? The painter didn't forget to paint that square. It is a commemoration that while I am in my new home, I'm going to leave a little piece here to remember that the temple is no longer here. And so she draws on this national Jewish mourning for the temples that we still mark today to show that renewal and mourning can coexist. And so what I think our message tonight is, we can hold the horror and the pain and the trauma of October 7th, and we can hold the pain of what Yael shared about Adi and her end, but we can also hold the beauty of her life and these beautiful boys that are going to grow up and remember their mother. And all of us now know Adi. Her name is on our lips now. We are continuing to carry that flame. That's the beauty of a candle, right? A candle, it never diminishes. You can light 1,000,000 candles from one candle. It will never diminish that original candle. It just continues to spread the light. And so that's what she talks about in this essay. And so she says there, and I want to read this part to you. One thing is clear to me. The act of rising must begin with mutual care. It requires that we talk to each other, not past one another. It demands that we care about each other, not only in crisis, but during the fragile process of rebuilding. In a real relationship, one has no choice but to play two roles, sometimes as a mourner and at other times a comforter. And it's why when Rabbanit Dalia charged me tonight to take care of you, I asked you also in return to take care of me, because that's the only way we will move forward. We're not going to just remember October 7th. We're also going to remember the heroic acts of bravery, not just on that day, but since that day, that are continuing to go on, the kindness, the connections that have been built. And so stop for 1 minute now. I asked you to go to pain. I asked you to look at 9 behaviors of traumatic invalidation that people may have done to you. I asked you to remember 9 behaviors of traumatic invalidation that maybe you did to yourself. I want us to stop for 1 minute and remember one person, one light in your life in the last 2 years that defied these dark, dark odds, that made a difference to you in a post-October 7th world. Just close your eyes and think about one person or one incident that happened that gave you light in the last 2 years. And I'm going to read the last words of Naama Levitz-Appelbaum. And she says, we must build a future that bears the imprint of our grief without it being consumed and defined by it. For this to happen, we must reach out to one another across oceans, across political divides, and ensure that no one rises alone. We must remember, as our tradition does, that the work of healing is communal. I have shared with you in other classes, for those of you that have been there before, that the work of coming out of trauma is in community. That's what Judith Herman writes about, that we only heal with community. We're not relying on the people that harmed us. We're not relying on those that refuse to see us. We are relying on those in whose eyes we are reflected. And when I read this essay, and even more so when listening to Yael speak, I was reminded about two specific pieces of Torah. One is a thing, and one is a story. The first one is about the broken tablets, right? Moses comes down from the mountain. He has the tablets, the Ten Commandments. He's so excited to give it to the people. He's finally down with these tablets. And he looks and he sees that they are celebrating around a golden calf. And he says, "This is what you did while I was up there." And he is so heartbroken that he shatters the tablets and they fall. Now, your child breaks something, you run, you say, "Nobody step, there's glass on the floor. You don't want anybody to get hurt." You sweep it up, you put it in a plastic bag, you wrap that plastic bag up, you put it in another plastic bag so that nobody gets hurt, right? I see the mothers laughing on the screen. But here, that's not what happened. We did not sweep up the tablets and throw them out. We swept up the tablets and we put them in the tabernacle. We put them in this moving Holy of Holies, this moving mini temple that went around with the Jewish people for 40 years until they made their way into Israel and continued in Israel. Because we're not going to sweep up the broken tablets. The broken tablets are going to travel with us. I started by saying October 7th has defined our generation. It's not going to go away, but we are, God willing, going to rise together. No matter when this ends, no matter how it ends, we're going to rise together in this community. And the second story that it made me think about is one that we also just read about on Rosh Hashanah, which is the story of Hannah. Hannah did not have children. She was married to a man named Elkanah. He had another wife, Penina, and Penina had children. And she would taunt Hannah, "You see, I'm the favored wife. I had children. You did not merit to have children." And so she was heartbroken. And so she goes and she prays. And she prays in a way where her lips are uttering. And the priest who is there where she is praying sees her and he mistakes her for a drunken woman. And he berates her. And when she explains her situation, he finally sees her, right? What does he do? He traumatically invalidates her. He invalidates Hannah's trauma. But when she gives words to what she really is doing there, he blesses her. And what does that blessing do? It allows Hannah to rise to the point where she sings a song to God. And that song is the song that we recite on the day of remembrance, right? Rosh Hashanah is Yom HaZikaron, the day of remembrance. And his ability to see her allows Hannah to see herself. It gives her that empathy that she needs to write that song that is time immemorial, right? It is something that we turn to on one of the holiest days of the year. And so seeing one another is the way that we heal each other. And so I want to end with the imagery of vision going into this holiday of Sukkot. And so I'm going to read this poem called The Journey by Mary Oliver. And I'm going to end with a blessing, and hopefully we will co-create a prayer together. The Journey by Mary Oliver. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice. Though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles. "Mend my life," each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do, though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late, enough, and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, or maybe in your sukkah. And there was a new voice which you slowly recognized as your own that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. May we hold other people's trauma together. May we hold other people's grief. But may we also make and find space for our own to be held as well. On October 7th this week, wherever you are, whether it is in your sukkah outside or whether you're outside, look up at the stars if you can see them. and close your eyes for a minute and send a wish of healing to yourself and to those in all of the circles of grief that we are holding tonight. I'm going to ask for Yael if she would like to just share which piece of tonight resonated with you or your wish. But while Yael is doing that, I'm going to ask everyone to just take a moment and share a word, a line, a few words of a wish for anyone in the circles of October 7th trauma and grief in the chat. And Rabbanit Dalia will work her magic to turn that into our communal prayer. So again, I'm going to ask Yael to just reflect, but while she's doing that, if you each could just take a minute and write your wish, your prayer. Thank you all so much, Yael.
Thank you, Guila. One of the words that I keep returning to and have returned to so much over the last 2 years is the word rupture. I feel like my life has been a series of ruptures since October 7th. And what I so appreciate, Guila, about those last two biblical images that you shared with us, that of the broken tablets being kept, but that I've never thought of the Hannah and Ellie story as starting from traumatic invalidation to that of blessing, but also empowerment. That because Ellie finally sees Hannah and her grief and her trauma, that she then finds her ability to pray and to call out, and it happens to be a beautiful prayer that's set to music, and people should search for it. Hannah's prayer. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful songs that have been written from those words. So I thank you, Guila, for giving me those two images, which are both the rupture of the broken tablets, but also a reminder that it's possible to repair. And repair doesn't mean that the brokenness disappears, but repair means we find our voice and we find ourselves empowered and with community, that we're able to build a better future. So thank you so much.
Amen. Thank you. Dalia, I turn it over to you.
Tequila, that was just incredible. And I want to be totally transparent that I'm going to read the beautiful words that everybody wrote, but it was Jordan who magically turned them into a prayer. So thank you, Jordan, and thank you, everybody, for the beautiful words that we're about to share together. A prayer for healing and belonging. Source of life, we gather tonight with hearts open, carrying both the weight of the world and the hope for renewal. May we know healing in our interconnectedness. May we listen deeply and feel truly seen. Grant us inner peace and calm, and help us turn towards ourselves with open-hearted compassion. We pray for a better, more peaceful world. We pray for all of our hostages to come home. We pray for a world of belonging, of safety, where we may feel whole again. Fill us with love and compassion, hope and healing. May those who feel deeply know they are held, and may all of us be renewed in some way. Thank you for the gift of tonight, for the sweetness of Sukkot, and for the joy of Simchat Torah. May every heart find light and every soul know love. Amen. So I want to close by really highlighting that last piece of the sweetness of Sukkot and the joy of Simchat Torah. And I want to leave you with a pasuk, with a verse that speaks about this beauty in Sukkot. And one of the things that kind of really came up for me that I was thinking about listening to you, Guila, was, the way that things went from a place where people were used to some type of reality, and then everything got shattered. And as Yael used the word ruptured, everything got undone. And it happened during a time where people were maybe at their most vulnerable, where they were sitting in their Sukkot. And sitting in the sukkah can be something so scary, and you're out there and anybody can come, and you're not protected in your home in a way that might feel safer. And it also can be a time of beautiful peace, and where you say, I'm here and I'm able to enjoy looking at the stars and being in nature and being with the people that I'm sitting here with. And hopefully this year it will become a time of peace again for us and a time of good news and of new beginnings. So I want to leave us with this phrase, which I think we're going to put on the screen. And if not, we'll definitely put it in the chat. And it goes like this. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'amidenu malkeinu l'chayim, ufros aleinu sukkot somecha. Hashem our God, make us lie down in peace. Our sovereign, raise us again to life. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. And for anyone who's had trouble sleeping, may you find peace again as you sleep. And for anyone who's felt scared, may you be able to feel vulnerable again and feel safe and feel at peace. And may we all feel this spread of beautiful shelter that's a peaceful shelter where we no longer have to struggle and we can come together and be in a time of true happiness and peace. So that is how I want to leave everybody for Sukkot, with some thank yous, of course, and important announcements. First of all, Yael, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing Adi's story with us. Thank you for allowing us to get to know her, and thank you for allowing us to get to know you. It has been so meaningful for us, and we will share materials more about Adi in the follow-up email. And Dr. Guila, thank you for your just abundance of deep wisdom, helping us understand what we're going through, giving words to the feelings that's hard to describe, and giving us tools to understand how to move forward, and for weaving that in with your Torah. It was really, really gorgeous. Thank you. And just thank you, everyone. Like Dr. Gila said, the only way forward is together. So thank you, each and every one of you, for being here. And may we only receive good news.